The Great Hunger. The Emerald Isle. Ireland, known as the Emerald Isle, is a beautiful island of northwestern Europe with rolling green hills, ancient castles, and windy shores. It has a colorful history and is famous for music, literature, and folklore. Some think of it as a magical land of elves, leprechauns, and fairies. Beyond its natural beauty, Ireland is a hard-working country whose economic health matches that of most of Western Europe. Tourism remains a prime industry. Over 6 million people travel to Ireland each year to see the beautiful countryside and places of historical interest. However, it hasn't always been that way, however. Hard times. Between 1800 and 1840, Ireland's population increased by over 50% to 8.5 million people. There was a little industry to support so many people. While the island had been ruled by Britain for over a century, it was a part of the United Kingdom. The Irish people did not have equal rights with the people of Britain. Most could not vote or hold public office. The few owned land. Unlike Britain, Ireland did not have many factories where people could work. Most people farmed land that they leased from wealthy landlords who lived in Britain. Many farms were only the size of a few acres. Tenant farmers grew wheat or other grains to pay their rent, and they grew potatoes to feed their families. A horrible discovery. Farmers made a horrible discovery as they went to the fields on a foggy fall day in 1845. The smell of decay filled the air, and the leaves of potato plants were black and wilted. The farmers dug desperately beneath the plants, only to discover that the potatoes were mushy. Something had happened during the night. Some thought it was unusually wet. Cold weather that had killed the potatoes. Others claimed it must have been traps of raring fairies, and that have destroyed the crop. Some British people of the Protestant faith that it was God's punishment on the Irish people for the Catholic faith. People depended on the potato crop for food. 3 million Irish people ate almost nothing but potatoes. A farmer with an acre of land could grow enough potatoes to feed his family. Potatoes which could be stored all winter provided a nutritious diet when eaten with milk, cabbage, and fish. Now a third of the crop rotted in the ground. The struggling families worried about how they could survive until spring. First winter, the landlords took the family's grain as payment for rent. Without potatoes, families had little to eat. They sold their livestock, furniture, and clothes to buy food. The government opened large workhouses where desperate families could live in exchange for work. No one wanted to go to a workhouse for help. Families worked long hours on a ragged bag and a little food, and no one could leave without permission. The government bought Indian corn from America to help feed the hungry population, but people did not have a way to grind the hard, dry kernels with cornmeal, and some got sick from eating poorly cooked corn. Food got more expensive, and people began desperate to find a way to earn money. The government started public work projects such as building roads and bridges to provide jobs. The work was hard, and the pay was low. It took nearly 5 days of work to buy a cornmeal to feed a family of six. To feed a family for six for 3 days. Still, men walked many miles and stood in long lines to get any work they could find. Hope, disaster, and relief. Finally, the long winter ended, and farmers eagerly waited for the new potato crop. Disaster struck again in August, when 3/4 of the crop failed. Desperate families had nothing left to sell. The households were crowded, and a long winter with no food loomed ahead. Families like 10-year-old Michelle O'Kane had no choice but to go to a workhouse because his father, a farm laborer, could find no work. Michelle, his parents, 2 brothers, and 3 sisters walked hours to the workhouse for Gilile village in September of 1847. He had to live with the boys and men in a separate area from his mother and sisters. He went to school in the morning and then whitewashed walls or cleaned pig pens all afternoon. His youngest sister, Bridget, died over the winter. Diseases spread easily, especially in the workhouses. Even more people died of typhus and cholera than died of starvation. Despite the obvious need, many officials and landowners in Britain ignored all pleas for help or relief plans. Grain was exported to other countries rather than kept to help Irish farmers. Other people wanted to help. The British Relief Association and the Society of Friends Quakers raised money for relief. Irish immigrants in America sent money to help family and friends. Soup kitchens opened, and each day up to 3 million men, women, and children stood outside in long lines for a bowl of soup and a piece of bread. It was not nearly enough. Going to America, every penny a family had was spent for food. So there was nothing left to pay the overdue rent on their farm. Some landlords gave money or grain to their starving tenants, but it was only a temporary help. Other landlords evicted families from their homes, and they tore down or burned the empty houses to avoid paying taxes of them. Driven from their country by hopeless conditions, hundreds and thousands of Irish people crowded onto ships bound for the United States or Canada, leaving their Irish homeland forever. It was a difficult journey because the ship took 40 days to cross the Atlantic Ocean, even when the weather was good. Many ships carrying the Irish immigrants were called coffin ships. Passengers were packed below deck, where disease spread in the overcrowded, filthy conditions. There were often not enough food, water, or blankets for the passengers. Many died, and many of those who survived arrived in America sick or weak. Aftermath: the potato blight was over by 1852, but Ireland had changed forever. 1 million people have died, and over 1 million had immigrated. Many people who stayed in Ireland were homeless and jobless. The landlords could not make money, so they sold the land for other purposes or simply abandoned it rather than pay high taxes. With no land and no jobs, many Irish people continued to immigrate over the next decades. By 1861, the population of Ireland had dropped from over 8.5 million to 5 million. More than one in 30 people were gone. 10 years later, a population had dropped even further to 4.5 million. Many Irish people blamed Britain, the most powerful country in the world at that time, for not helping more. Their bitterness would help fuel the revolution that finally split Ireland into two countries in 1922. Conclusion. Scientists eventually discovered that the potato plants died of a disease called leaf potato blight, which was caused by the fungus-like organism Phytophthora infestans. Spores from the organism was blown by wind and washed into the soil by rain. Even after the Great Hunger, as the famine was called in Ireland, Irish immigrants arrived between 1850 and 1920. Some ran for political office and others started businesses. Famous Americans including President John F. Kennedy and the inventor Henry Ford had ancestors who came to America during the famine. Today, 40 million Americans proudly claim Irish roots, celebrate its folk traditions and holidays, and continue to popularize Irish literature, music, and film as an established part of the world culture.